You wake up on a Saturday morning, and she's no longer there. The bed is cold on her side. The closet, empty. The drawers, open and cleared out. And there's a note on the kitchen table with 3 lines that destroy 15 years of your life. In that moment, your chest tightens, your hands tremble, and a single question explodes in your head. How did this happen so fast? The truth is, it didn't happen fast. You just didn't see it. While you're still trying to process what happened, she's already moving on. It feels impossible, cruel, inhuman. How can someone switch off like that? How can someone who once said she loved you look at you with such coldness? The answer goes against everything you believe about love and marriage. She didn't switch off now. She switched off months ago, maybe years. Divorce for you is the beginning of pain. For her, it's the end. That's the first major shock no one prepares you to face. Men and women live the end of a marriage on completely different timelines. When she finally walks out the door, you're just starting to realize something is wrong. She, on the other hand, has already gone through all the stages of grief, alone in silence, inside her own mind. She's already cried, already wondered if she should stay, already imagined life without you, already tested every possibility in her head. When she announces the divorce, it's not an impulsive decision. It's the conclusion of a long, painful process you didn't see happening. And that explains why she seems so cold now. You see her posting smiling photos. Going out with friends. Maybe even with someone new. And you? You can barely get out of bed. You can barely eat. You lose weight or gain it. You stop taking care of yourself. The beard grows, the body slumps, your posture drops. Meanwhile, she's radiant. She looks renewed. And it eats you up inside because it feels unfair. It feels like you're the only one suffering. But the truth is, she already suffered. Alone. Back when you still thought everything was fine. Now comes the part that hurts the most. You're going to try to understand. You'll search for explanations. You'll want to talk, ask her for coffee, try to have an adult conversation to understand what happened. You believe you deserve that. You believe you have the right to answers, to closure, to an explanation that makes sense. But here's the brutal truth no one tells you: you'll never get that. She's not going to sit down with you and say, "Look, this, and that happened, and that's why I don't love you anymore." She's not going to validate your pain. She's not going to acknowledge your suffering. She's not going to say you were a good husband but that, unfortunately, it didn't work out. None of that will happen. Because in order for her to move on and feel good about herself, she needs a story where you're the villain and she's the victim. She needs to believe that you're to blame. That you didn't value her. That you were negligent, distant, insensitive. And every time you try to talk, every word you say will be used as proof of that story. You'll fall into traps without realizing it. You'll try to be understanding, apologize for things you don't even fully grasp, promise to change. And that will only confirm to her that you really were the problem. Or you'll explode in anger, send harsh messages, demand answers, question her. And that too will confirm her story. See? He's aggressive, unstable, can't handle his emotions. You're trapped in a game where every move leads to defeat. And there's more. You'll start to discover things. Little lies she told friends and family. Distorted versions of events you remember completely differently. She'll say you never helped around the house, even though you remember doing things. She'll say you never gave her attention, even though you remember being present. She'll tell stories where you're cold, selfish, absent. And the worst part? People will believe her, not you. Because society already has a ready-made script. The suffering woman who finally freed herself from a bad marriage. The insensitive man who lost his wife through neglect. That script sells. That script is comfortable. And you'll be forced into it, whether you like it or not. Now stop for a second and take a deep breath. If you're living this right now, or have lived it, you need to understand one thing. None of this means you're weak or wrong for suffering. What's happening to you is real, legitimate, and extremely painful. But there is a way out. There's a way to go through this hell and come out the other side not just alive, but renewed. If this message is resonating with you, subscribe to the channel to follow this whole process of rebuilding. The real problem isn't the divorce itself. The problem is that you're trying to deal with it the wrong way. You're seeking external validation when you should be seeking internal reconstruction. You're trying to understand what happened when you should be accepting that some things simply have no rational explanation. You're trying to reclaim a role that no longer exists, the role of her husband. Because what died wasn't just the marriage. It was your identity. You're no longer anyone's husband. And that terrifies you, because for years you built your entire life around that role. Your decisions, your plans, your priorities, all revolved around being the husband, the provider, the partner. And now that role is gone. You're naked, exposed, not knowing who you are. That's the true horror of divorce for a man. It's not just losing the woman. It's losing yourself. And this is where most men make the most devastating mistake of all. They try to recover their lost identity by doing exactly what destroys them even more, chasing her validation. You start sending messages. They're not aggressive at first. They're filled with emotion, vulnerability, and desperation disguised as maturity. You say you understand your mistakes, that you're willing to change, that you realize how important she was. You open your heart, show your wounds, believing that this brutal honesty will touch her, will make her remember the man she once loved. But every one of those messages is a stab in your own chest. Because she won't respond with empathy. She'll respond with coldness, or worse, with pity. And pity is the opposite of attraction. Pity is the opposite of respect. When a woman feels pity for you, it's the final proof that you no longer exist as a man in her eyes. You've become a problem to be managed, not a person to be loved. So you try another strategy. You try to be the understanding, mature guy who accepts everything peacefully. You say you respect her decision, that you want her to be happy, that you can stay friends. You believe that by showing this artificial maturity, she'll see your value. But that too is self-destruction. Because you're not being mature, you're being cowardly. You're hiding your real pain behind a mask of acceptance that doesn't exist. And she knows it. Women can feel when you're pretending. Then comes the real desperation. You start doing things you never imagined you would do. You beg. You cry on the phone. You show up at her house unannounced. You send flowers. You write long letters explaining your feelings. You humiliate yourself in every possible way, because deep down you believe that if she sees how much you're suffering, she'll come back. After all, she loved you once, right? So there must be something inside her that still cares. But here's the truth that's going to hurt. The more you show desperation, the more you confirm that she made the right decision. Every unanswered call, every message seen and ignored, every encounter where she looks at you with those empty eyes, all of it eats away at you. And you start to realize something terrifying. The woman you loved no longer exists. That person who laughed at your jokes, who hugged you with affection, who said she loved you, she's simply gone. In her place stands a stranger who treats you with glacial indifference. And the worst part? You'll start to question your own reality. You'll look back and wonder if anything was ever real. If she ever truly loved you or was just acting the whole time. You'll go over every memory, every happy moment, searching for signs that it was doomed from the start. You'll remember that trip when she seemed distant, that dinner when she was quiet, that week when the sex stopped. And you'll piece together all those fragments, trying to build a puzzle that explains the unexplainable. But this search for signs is another poison. Because even if you find every sign in the world, it won't change anything. It won't bring her back. It won't make you feel better. It will only feed your obsession and stop you from moving on. You'll become a detective of your own suffering, investigating every detail, every conversation, every interaction, searching for the exact moment when everything fell apart. Meanwhile, your life is falling apart too. You stop working out, or you start working out obsessively. You stop eating, or eat too much. You stop performing at work, your responsibilities slip away. Your friends pull back because you only talk about her. Your family worries but doesn't know what to do. You're trapped in an emotional limbo where you can't go back to the past but can't move forward either. And there's a specific moment, usually weeks or months later, when you discover something that breaks you completely. Maybe it's a photo on social media. Maybe it's a comment from someone. Maybe it's a casual encounter on the street. But you find out she's seeing someone. Or already in another relationship. And it destroys you in a way you weren't prepared for. Because you were still in the grieving stage, still processing the end, still trying to understand. And she's already kissing someone else. Already laughing with someone else. Already building new memories with someone else. How is that possible? How can someone replace 15 years in 3 months? The answer is simple and brutal: she didn't replace you. She had already processed everything before she left. This is the moment when many men completely collapse. It's when the rage explodes, when hatred surfaces, when you do things you'll later regret. You send offensive messages. You stalk her and the new guy's social media. You badmouth her to mutual friends. You try to sabotage her happiness somehow. And each of these actions only buries you deeper in the hole. Because while you're obsessed with her, she's living. That's the fundamental difference. She's already done the emotional work. She's already suffered, already cried, already questioned if she was doing the right thing, already gone through all the stages. Now she's free. And you're trapped. Trapped in anger, in resentment, in the need for justice that will never come. You want her to admit she was wrong, to acknowledge your pain, to regret it. But that will never happen. And while you wait for that impossible validation, your life keeps passing by. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and you stay in the same place. Still ruminating, still remembering, still reliving. Still being the abandoned ex-husband who can't move on. And that becomes your new identity. You're no longer who you were before her. You're no longer her husband. You're just the man who was left behind. But there is a way out. And that way out has nothing to do with her. The turning point comes when you finally understand that you've been fighting the wrong person. The enemy isn't her. It never was. The enemy is the version of you that still believes life only makes sense with her in it. The enemy is the man who built his entire identity around being her husband, her provider, her partner. That man needs to die so you can be reborn. And that death hurts more than the divorce itself. Because it means accepting that the last few years of your life were built on a false foundation. It means looking in the mirror and recognizing that you got lost. That you stopped being yourself to become who you thought she needed. That you sacrificed dreams, ambitions, hobbies, friendships, everything, in the name of a marriage she had already abandoned internally while you still believed in it. This is the most dangerous moment. It's when many men completely give up. They sink into alcohol, drugs, or deep depression. Some think of even worse things. Because it feels like there's nothing on the other side of the pain. It feels like the only options are to suffer forever or to disappear. But here's the truth no one tells you when you've hit rock bottom. This extreme suffering is actually the beginning of healing. At the bottom of the pit is where you finally stop digging. And you stop digging when you accept 3 brutal truths. First, she's not coming back, and even if she did, she wouldn't be the same person. Second, you'll never get the closure you're looking for, because closure is something you create for yourself, not something someone else gives you. Third, the life you had is over, and trying to resurrect it is denying reality. Accepting these truths doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means you stop feeding it. So you make the most important decision of your life, to cut contact completely. It's not a temporary block to make her miss you. It's not a strategy to win her back. It's a definitive decision to protect your mental sanity. You block her number. You block her on social media. You stop asking mutual friends about her. You stop driving past her house. You stop checking if she saw your status. And at first, it's hell. The first few days without any contact are the worst. You feel physical anxiety, an almost biological need to know what she's doing. Your hands itch to grab your phone. You invent mental excuses to reach out, something about the house, a document, something left behind. But you resist. Because you finally understand that every contact is a step backward. And then something strange starts to happen. Slowly, in the small spaces between the pain, you start to breathe again. You wake up on a Saturday and don't think about her for the first 5 minutes. Then it's 10 minutes. Then an hour. You go a whole day without stalking her on social media and realize the world didn't end. You start noticing small things. The coffee tastes better. The sun looks brighter. You smile for real for the first time in months at something a friend says. Now comes the part that will change everything. You need to rebuild your identity from scratch. And that means returning to the things you abandoned. That hobby you left behind. That personal project you shelved. That dream you postponed because she didn't support it. That trip you wanted to take. That course you wanted to start. Everything that was sacrificed on the altar of marriage must be reclaimed now. You go back to the gym, not to impress her, but to regain respect for yourself. You clean your home, not to have guests over, but because you deserve to live in an organized space. You buy new clothes, not to get attention, but because you need to feel good in your own skin. Every small action is a brick in rebuilding your self-esteem. And then something surprising happens. You start to enjoy your own company. You discover you can have dinner alone without feeling pathetic. You can watch a movie alone and actually enjoy it. You can travel alone and savor the freedom. You realize that for years you outsourced your happiness to another person, and now you're learning to generate it within yourself. And that's liberating in a way you never imagined. But the true turning point happens when you look back and see the man you were at the beginning of this journey. That desperate man, begging for scraps of attention, destroying his own dignity in the name of a love that was already dead. And you feel a strange mix of compassion and shame. Compassion because you understand he was in pain. Shame because you realize how wrong he was about everything. And then comes the final revelation: she didn't destroy you. She only revealed who you had become. A man with no purpose of his own. A man who orbited around her instead of having his own gravity. A man who measured his worth by how much she desired him. And now you're discovering that your worth doesn't come from outside. It never did. You just believed it did because it was easier than doing the internal work of building yourself. This is the moment when your anger toward her turns into gratitude. Not romantic or foolish gratitude, but a deep gratitude for forcing you to wake up. Because you could have spent another 10-20 years trapped in that mediocre version of yourself. And she gave you the opportunity, even unintentionally, to become someone better. Months later, you're somewhere doing something completely ordinary. Having coffee, walking in the park, talking with a friend. And suddenly you realize you haven't thought about her all day. It wasn't a conscious effort. It just happened. And that realization hits you like lightning. You're free. Not free from her specifically, but free from the need for her. You look around and see your life in a completely different way. That apartment that once felt empty is now your sanctuary. That routine that once felt meaningless now has purpose. Those friends you had neglected are now your real support network. You've built a new life from the rubble of the old one, and this life is truly yours. Then something interesting happens. You run into her on the street, or at a party, or somewhere random. Your heart races for a second, but it's no longer that gut-wrenching pain. It's just the echo of something that once existed. You greet her politely, talk for a few minutes, and go your separate ways. And as you walk away, you realize something extraordinary. You don't want anything from her anymore. Not explanations, not reconciliation, not even revenge. You simply don't care anymore. That's real closure. It doesn't come from her. It comes from you. You understand now that the problem was never the divorce itself. The problem was the version of you that didn't know how to exist alone. The man who measured his worth by someone else's love. The man who outsourced his happiness. The man who sacrificed his essence to fit into a mold he thought was necessary. That man is dead. And in his place exists someone stronger, more aware, more whole. You realize that for years you lived on autopilot. You woke up, worked, went home, repeated. You had no real passions. No personal goals. No life that was truly your own. You were a side character in someone else's movie. And now you're the protagonist of your own film. And here's the part no one tells you. When you finally become this better version of yourself, when you regain your essence, your purpose, your strength, something curious happens. People start to see you differently. Women start to show interest. Opportunities appear. Life responds to your transformation. But the most important thing is, you don't need any of that to feel complete. You learn that relationships are complements, not foundations. That another person can add to your life, but can't be your life. That true love comes from two complete individuals choosing to share their lives, not from two desperate halves trying to make a whole. And that understanding changes everything. Now when you get involved with someone, it's from a place of abundance, not need. You're not looking for someone to complete or save you. You're sharing a life that's already good on its own. And that completely changes the dynamic. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't accept crumbs. You don't sacrifice your essence to please. Because you finally understand that your peace is worth more than any relationship. And if you happen to hear news about her, if someone says she asked about you, or showed interest in reconnecting, you no longer feel that surge of hope. You feel distant curiosity, maybe even compassion. But there's no desire to go back. Because you know that dynamic was toxic. That relationship was built on a lesser version of you. And you no longer fit in that box. The most powerful lesson of this whole process is this: pain isn't the end, it's the fuel for transformation. Every man who goes through a devastating divorce has a choice. He can become bitter, resentful, forever a victim. Or he can use that pain as a catalyst to become the best version of himself. The difference between these two paths isn't in the circumstances, it's in the decision. You choose to remain the victim, or you choose to become the hero of your own story. And when you choose the second path, something magical happens. You don't just overcome the divorce, you become grateful for it. Because without that pain, you never would have done the inner work. You would have stayed stuck in that mediocre, comfortable, asleep version of yourself. The divorce forced you to wake up. Forced you to question everything. Forced you to rebuild from scratch. And that rebuilding revealed who you really are when all the social masks are gone. So here's the final truth. She wasn't the love of your life. She was the teacher you needed at that moment. The lesson was brutal, painful, almost unbearable. But you passed. You survived. And more than that, you evolved. You became a man who doesn't depend on external validation, who doesn't sacrifice his essence, who knows his own worth. And that man no longer fears abandonment. Because he finally understands that the only abandonment that truly matters is when you abandon yourself. And that, you will never do again. If this journey made sense to you, if these words in any way touched your reality, subscribe to the channel. Because this transformation isn't just yours. It belongs to every man who had the courage to look into the abyss and choose to rise from the ashes.